It is January 12th. Oh, I had to make sure I get the date right. I feel like I always get it wrong sometimes. And I hope you watch some college basketball this week because this is a college basketball podcast. This is blue-blooded. I hope you're in the right spot. But I will say, sports in general are absolutely crazy this week. This feels like the best time of the year, low-key for sports. I know what the sports equinox is in the fall, I think, with the MLB playoffs, but not really so much a baseball guy here. So NFL playoffs going on right now. They've been going on all weekend. They're gonna have a Monday night game also. College football playoff is going on. Indiana, Miami are gonna be in the national championship, which by the way is in Miami. And I'm gonna go out on a limb and say there's gonna be more Indiana fans there than Miami, which is probably the case, even though it's in Miami, just because the Indiana fans are wild. But this is a college basketball podcast. This was the first real week of conference play, and the first, like, when you think of random winter Saturday and random winter week in college basketball, this was the kind of week you get. It's January, it's February, everybody's playing conference games, every game matters a ton, you're getting a ton of great matchups, a lot of top teams going down and teams moving all over the place. So I'm going to get to talking through everything. Like I said, I am alone today. I'll get to Michigan loss. We'll talk about Arizona being the first sure number one team. I'll talk about Florida. You see the shirt, only Gators get out alive. I was in Florida this past weekend in Gainesville for the Florida-Tennessee game. We were hanging out with Todd Golden and the team and the staff and everything there. Awesome week for them. Obviously, we will talk more about them in length, but it was awesome. Very, very much love the program, love the people down there. Highly recommend to get to a game down there also because it's one of the best game day environments I have ever been to on campus for a college basketball game. It was awesome, which reminds me, gotta shout out the new friends of the program. You see the jerseys behind me if you are watching. You got Florida special. It's a Central Florida special. We got the Florida Gators all the way to the side, obviously. You see the shirt. Also, look at this. I wish this was real. If you're watching, you can see it. It is, can we focus the camera properly on this? There we go. It's a replica of the national championship ring that they gave to all the guys last year, which is pretty cool. They sell them in the bookstore, and I don't know, they wanted me to walk around the bookstore and wear it so people would buy it. So there you go. Shout out the Gators for giving me that. We got, even though there's no number, we got a blue Florida jersey and a white one. And we got the Central Florida Knights, UCF, another Big 12 school coming into the mix in the studio. Also, shout out to Colorado, the Buffs, another Big 12 school. Don't have a jersey, but they sent a ton of really cool gear. So shout out to Colorado, UCF, and Florida for joining the friends of the program. And let's get right into all of the good content for you. No news and notes today. We are going to get right into it because we got a good one. The home court advantage of the week presented by Home Field. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that this will probably be the only time ever that we highlight away fans on the home court advantage of the week. It's that drastic of a thing that we need to talk about. Utah State, Boise State fan saga. If you don't know about this, then boy, buckle up because this is unbelievable. I have truly never heard of this in college basketball in my entire life. And if you have heard of that, the story, you're going to enjoy it anyway because it's a great laugh and it's a good one. So, Utah State playing at Boise State on Saturday, January 10th. Boise State classes don't start again for the spring semester until January 12th. So, students aren't technically on campus, so they don't expect a crazy crowd for the home game for their student section. So, what do they say? On Friday, the day before the game, they put out a tweet that says, you know what? If you have a student ID of any kind, high school, college, whatever, you can come sit in the corral in our student section for Boise State. That's what their name of their student section is. So Utah State, their fans, the Herd, that's what they're called, their student section, some of the best fans in the entire country, and they're known for that. Like, they are 100% known for that. That's a commonly known thing in the country, especially in the Mountain West. They say, okay, let me get on my GPS. Utah State is about 4.5 hours away from Boise State. That's nothing, especially in the Western geography where everything is so spread out. So what do Utah State fans say? Great, we're going to make the weekend trip. That's easy. The game day comes around Saturday. Boise State hears about this, and they put out a revised tweet. They quote tweet the original one, and they say, you know what? Like, we actually meant you had to have a student ID from the state of Idaho only, which is crazy because they obviously heard about it. They basically went back on their word, like, which I get. Like, I understand they don't want to have a literal home environment for the away team coming into their building. That's the last thing you want to have. But they made this mess. They did this to themselves. That's on them for not thinking that Utah State fans were going to be the ones that come. Like U of Idaho and Eastern Washington and Wazoo, I think are the schools that are nearby. I'm not even really sure. Like, why would they come more than the Utah State fans come? Like, obviously the Utah State fans are going to make that trip. I digress nonetheless. Let's go on with it. So, Utah State fans already planning on making the trip. This is Saturday when they tweeted this out about the Idaho specific thing. So, Utah State fans, 4.5-hour trip. They're already on their way up to Boise. So, the Utah State coaching staff and athletic department fundraised about $1,000, I heard, for all the fans and students already making the trip so that they could still go and be at the game. So, Utah State fans, they end up being in the building still. They go, they are loud, and it feels like a home environment. Boise State is shooting free throws in their own home stadium, and the stadium sounds like it's an away game because the Utah State fans are going absolutely crazy. I saw multiple Boise State reporters and fans and personnel that were in the building saying that, like, it's pretty embarrassing. Like, this is absolutely awful look for Boise State, and I completely agree. Utah State ends up winning the game by 25 in Boise, Idaho. Don't know if the fans obviously had some kind of impact. I think the after the game, Mason Falslev, I saw in his story, they posted a picture with all the entire Utah State team with their Utah State herd fans in Boise, Idaho after a massive win. And Boise's a good team. The Mountain West is kind of down this year. Utah State's been the best team by far, but Boise State's probably second, third, or fourth best team, give or take. So this is a massive win for Utah State, and shout out to the Utah State fans and the herd for making that trip and pursuing through all adversity, because that is absolutely unbelievable. It's hilarious to me that Boise State put themselves in that situation because they tried to go back on it, and it probably ended up backfiring in that sense, because I would imagine that they were even more fired up, the Utah State fans, because of that. And shout out to them because they made it a home game in an away crowd when they needed a big win, and they got it. So that's the home court advantage of the week. Away home court advantage of the week presented by Home Field. Shout out to Utah State. That's crazy. Truly a one-of-a-kind story that you're going to see in all of sports, even college sports. It never ceases and fails to amaze me, especially in the Mountain West and college basketball. But that's why we love this sport, because of wacky stuff like that. Let's get on to the real content, takeaways, game recaps, and everything. And I want to start with Utah State. What better place to start with than with the Aggies of Utah State after talking about their fan trip up to Boise, Idaho? Because realistically, I'm thinking about how I want to phrase this. This current Utah State team is probably the best team in Utah State history, the best team in program history. They're 14-1. They're number 20 in KenPom right now, which is the highest they've ever been ranked. Not ever, sorry. Almost ever. The highest they've been ranked since the Mountain West Tournament Finals in 2023, and they ended up losing that game and then falling a little bit after that into the NCAA tournament. The highest seed they've ever gotten in the NCAA tournament was an 8 seed a couple of years ago. This is a program with not a ton of history that is, for me, ranked number 20 in the country. I'm putting out my power rankings today. They are my number 20 team in the country. You look at how they've been winning games and kind of how good can they actually be, because I feel like in the past few years when they got into the tournament, they've been good in the regular season. They've been nowhere near dangerous in March. This is clearly the best team that they could put together to be actually dangerous in March. Mason Falslev, who coming into the year, I and many others thought was going to win and at least contend for Mountain West Player of the Year, and he's been good. I'm not trying to slander him at all. Mason Falslev's had a good year. He has basically the same exact production across the board as he had last year for a team that's even better and the clear best team in the conference, but it's his teammate that is going to win. MJ Collins is scoring over 20 points a game, shooting 48% from three with the Mason Falslev that you got last year. Unbelievable duo to have in the Mountain West, and really on the national landscape scale, Mason Falslev and MJ Collins together are two Mountain West Player of the Year caliber players. Like, that's what they have on this team, and that's why they've been able to just dominate the entire Mountain West so far. They have good depth beyond them. They are top 40, I think, in bench scoring in the entire country. Gary Clark, I've talked about him a lot, the Texas A&M Corpus Christi transfer. I'm a big fan of him. High energy, athletic, lengthy, good rebounder. This is a really, really dangerous team. Their analytical profiles, you can see how well they shoot the ball from 2 and 3. They're super efficient in both the 2 and the 3-point shots. offensive rebounding is great. Their size is a lot better. They can compete athletically with these bigger teams and power teams. They're also 17th in overall experience and 45th in roster continuity. Both those things are so massive, especially for teams that are trying to make a jump, right? They had a lot of guys from last year. They added on to that because they're trying to do what they did last year and just take it up a notch. And they are doing that. Everything is going to plan. 45th in continuity has been a trend in the entire country. If you look at the teams that are at the top of the country in terms of roster continuity, majority of them are playing very well, and a lot of them are outperforming expectations. There's a lot of MVC teams and Miami, Ohio, and teams like that. So 16 games left for them. Utah State in the regular season. They're, what I say they are? They're 14-1 right now. They have 16 games left. Are they going to win every single one and win out? No, probably not, but they don't need to. The thing about the Mountain West, I will say, what gives them a chance to run table, though, the Mountain West has not been good. It's been very, outside of them, it's been an underperforming league for the most part. Boise's been very hot and cold ever since the Hawaii Pacific loss. San Diego State has gotten blown out of the water a couple times and been very streaky offensively. Colorado State looked like they were a fun new team, and New Mexico has looked pretty good for the most part, but they both also have dropped games and not looked amazing. They have had, Utah State's had a 10, an 8, and a 10 seed in the last 3 years. Jared Calhoun is an amazing coach. He's won before at Eastern Washington. He's winning now. He was winning last year. He is a great coach with a team that returned a lot, 2 Conference Player of the Year level players. Utah State is one of the toughest places to go play. Logan, Utah is an absolutely insanely tough place to play, one of the toughest places to play in the entire country, and now their fans are traveling. So Utah State, I'm firmly on watch because truly this is one of the best Mountain West teams as of right now that we have seen in a few years since San Diego State got that 5 seed. Kicking it up a notch, Michigan goes down to Wisconsin at home in Ann Arbor. I did not think I'd be saying those words today on January 12th after talking them up so much, Michigan, last week. But here we are. I want to start with the positive on the Wisconsin side because it's not like Michigan lost to some like dog shit team. Wisconsin's, contrary to what people believe about what I think about Wisconsin, I think Adam was more the one that got the hate for Wisco. I said earlier in the year that they were on track to probably miss a tournament, which they were at the time. Like they definitely were. This win for Wisconsin is everything. This puts them firmly in the case in the tournament bid spot. Like right now, if season ends, they get a tournament bid for sure. If they didn't have this win, if they would have lost by double digits, whatever, like they were going into, most people anticipating in the country, like I don't know where they'd be. They'd probably be on the bubble somewhere, but the analytical boost they get from this game and the massive quad 1A on the road, like this is the best possible win you can have in college basketball, winning at a Michigan, at an Arizona, at Iowa State, at one of those best teams in the country. So it's massive for them. They got the recipe to beat Michigan. Granted, it took shooting the absolute lights out. I think they shot like 48% from 3 in some capacity, or at one point it was 48% from 3. They shot the lights out. I think it was 15 for 33 what they ended. They defended the paint really well, and they basically forced Michigan to have to keep up with them down the stretch and forced them to have to take outside shots because Michigan looks inside. They look low first, and when they can't find that, shot clock dwindles down. They have some good shooters, but shooting is one of their quote concerns. It's not a major weakness they have relative to other teams, but if you take away their inside in some capacity and force them to shoot a lot more, it's going to be an issue for them because it's not how they like to play. They like to play inside and then out. Inside, make defenses converge so that you can open up easy shots outside, and Wisconsin took that away to enough of a level to make Michigan have to rely on their 3-ball, and it didn't work. And it obviously helps that Wisconsin had one of their best shooting days that you could possibly have, especially in the last 10 minutes of the game. It felt like they were shooting everything from the parking lot going in. Andrew Rohde's hitting corner no-dip threes, which isn't his artillery. I get that, but everything had to go right for Wisconsin, and it did. Shout out to Wisco because that is absolutely massive. And if you want me to say a little bit of I'm sorry also, sure. I guess I talked Wisconsin down a little too much, so I'll give you that credit. And Wisconsin's also always due for a top 5 win every single year. It feels like they beat a top 5 team every year. The real story for me in this game, though, is Michigan. Obviously, Wisconsin. This game doesn't change what I think of Wisconsin a ton, other than okay, they can shoot the absolute lights out and beat anybody on a given night. Clearly they have that capability in them. We knew they kind of had shooters and had those guys on roster, but we haven't really seen it like this yet. So credit to them. But Michigan is the all-confusing team in the entire country. Again, it's back to that game of what's the real Michigan, right? Is this the real Michigan that can be vulnerable and taken out of their strengths so easily when they've been doing it so well? Or are we going to get the team that beat Gonzaga by 40, right? Like if you look at their schedule, they beat Oakland to start the year, then they beat Wake by 1 in overtime and TCU by 4. Two teams that have had their respective hot and cold streaks and moments in the year, but two teams that Michigan should have beaten handily. And at the beginning of the year, Michigan was turning the ball over at relatively alarming rates. And then all of a sudden, for I think 10 games straight after that, they started kicking the shit out of everybody. They beat Gonzaga by 40. They beat Auburn by 30. They beat San Diego State by 40. Like, they look like the greatest team ever. This is what that's what they look like in all those games 10 in a row. So when you do that for so long and so consistent over a 10-game period over months' time, it's kind of like, okay, maybe those first 3 games, 2 or 3 games are kind of like, it's not the end of the world. Like, they figured it out. Those are the first 3 games of the year. We're good now. We got it. We got the kinks out. We got the rust off. Then they go to Penn State. They almost lose at Penn State. Penn State had a last possession to win the game, and they chucked up a terrible shot. Michigan escapes winning by 2. It's like, okay, you have those games. Big Ten, on the road, things happen. I don't know. Then they come home to Wisconsin. They get completely taken out of their inside-out scoring game. Wisconsin shoots the absolute lights out of them. Wisconsin defensively was good enough to give Michigan issues. Look at those teams. That should not be an issue. That is a major concern for Michigan. So that's 2 games in a row now where Michigan has looked like the Wake Forest TCU game Michigan from the beginning of the year. So now you've gone through a 3-game stretch of being shaky to start the year, 10 games of being the best team ever, and now 2 games of being back to that shaky Michigan team. So what is the real Michigan team is what people are going to be saying. I think it's going to be a very polarizing debate of people will be on one side or the other for the most part. I'm not going to be a Michigan is a complete fraud take type of person and on that team. It's ridiculous to say that, but I'm also not going to be the person that says, hey, it was just 2 games. Michigan's still one of the best teams ever. Like, they're amazing. I have no worry at all. You can't come away from this week with Michigan and not have some kind of worry. Not worry about what they can do against majority of their schedule. Worry about them winning a national championship. Like, Yaxel Lendenborg's posting a cake after Players Era with a 40-0 thing on it. Like, that's their goal, is to win every single game, win every game by 40, win every game, dominate to a national championship. That's the quality they have on the team. They've proven that over a majority of the season so far. They have the coaching, they have the system, they have everything they need to go and do that. I am somewhere in between, which sounds like a cop-out, but I think that's just being reasonable, right? Because obviously at their peak, Michigan is going to be able to beat everybody, and they probably are going to beat everybody. If Michigan plays their game to the best of their capabilities, there are maybe 2 or 3 teams in the country that could beat them. I truly, truly still believe that. But the issue we're seeing now is that they're vulnerable, and not only to just opponent styles and different types of styles of opponent, I think they're more vulnerable to themselves is my bigger worry, because for March, if they can lose their rhythm like this over a 2-game span, sure, they might get out of playing a 16 seed and maybe an 8 or 9 seed, but then you have to play a 4 or 5 seed, and that mojo might be gone. And then you're going to have to do it again versus a 2 seed, and then a 1 seed and a 1 seed potentially in the Final Four. Like, those are things you have to look at. And the volatility I do not enjoy with this Michigan team at all. Could they win it all? National championship, Big Ten, everything. Of course they can. They might still go on and lose 1 or 2 games the rest of the year, and we might be talking about this kind of laughing in April as they're about to play in the Final Four. But there's a realistic world where Michigan gets cold for multiple games in a row, and they get uncomfortable and vulnerable, and they fall again. And if it's in March, then your season's over. It's that simple. So I'm not overly worried at Michigan. I'll probably put them on the panic meter just to put them on anyway, because they did lose the game, to give you an official score. But it's confusing. It goes back to that game of what kind of Michigan are we getting. I still think Michigan is a top 3 team in the country. It just makes me more confident now that, okay, Arizona, Michigan, Iowa State, UConn, etc., I think we can start to bunch these teams together, maybe other than Arizona, Iowa State right now, because those 2 teams have been ridiculously good and undefeated also, especially Arizona with their resume. But we'll kind of see the Michigan that we get the rest of the year. They're going to play Washington and Oregon away, this week. Then they get Indiana, Ohio State before Nebraska and Michigan State at home. These next 4 are obviously must win. Every game is essentially must win for Michigan, but Washington, Oregon, Indiana, who's been decent, and Ohio State, who's also not been bad, you have to win. And then you get Nebraska, Michigan State, which will be really a fun game. So hopefully for Michigan's sake, they get back on track, but we'll kind of see what we get. And I mentioned it, Arizona, the obvious number 1 team in the country. They've been number 1 in the AP poll because their early season resume was so good, beating teams like UConn, all over the country and having that elite resume and not being deserving of being knocked off number one. I will take the blame actually for Michigan, and Arizona fans should thank me, I guess, if they wanted Michigan to lose, because I had Arizona at number one for that same case. They got to number one the earliest because they played the best teams. They beat the best teams right away. Michigan becomes unbelievable. They start beating everybody by 40, whatever. Analytically, and I'm a big analytics guy, it looks like, okay, maybe Michigan should be one. I put that off for weeks. I say, you know what? No. My logic is Arizona's got to be number one. Until last week, I said, you know what? It's a new year. Michigan has been ridiculous. I can't look at their analytical statistical profile and watch them play and win by 40 every week and not have them at number one. So I swapped them. Michigan 1, Arizona 2. And also Arizona fans don't like me. I don't know why. Apparently Arizona fans think I hate them. I don't talk about them enough. Here you go, Arizona fans. You are the best team in the country. Without a doubt, without a sliver of doubt, you are the best team in the country, Arizona. Congratulations. You are also the only team that is top 5 in offensive and defensive efficiency right now, which I absolutely love. I think balance is super, super important. They obviously offensive rebound the absolute shit out of the ball. They have a great about 7 or 8 man rotation, which is awesome. Braden Burries has stepped up to astronomical heights that I did not anticipate him to get to at this point of the year, because beginning of the year, I actually was on the case that he was going to be their best player and best freshman, and then it looked like Koa Pete was going to be their best player and best freshman. Jaden Bradley, obviously, and Krivos and Toby Awaka, and Braden Burries was going to be like a little spark plug. And now Braden Burries has gotten to a point where he might be their best player. And I think it's a good conversation to have, and it's a fun debate, because that's the glory of Arizona. It could be Koa Pete, it could be Jaden Bradley, it could be Krivos on a night. Toby Awaka is huge for them, and it could be Braden Burries. Even Anthony Del Orso and Yvonne are great, and I still love Dwayne Aristotle, and I still hold my stock there. So Arizona's rotation is big, it's physical. They are a problem. They are an absolute problem. My one concern for Arizona is the three-point volume. They are bottom 5 in the country in three-point volume. It's fine because they shoot the ball well when they shoot it from 3, and they score so well inside. It's kind of like that Michigan thing also. Like, I think Arizona is a better quality shooting team. They have better shooters in their team, so it's less of a worry. But in terms of stylistically, it's a similar concern of if a team can stifle them a little bit or force them to keep up from 3, can they shoot 30-plus threes in a game and keep up with teams? They've obviously beaten Alabama, and Alabama's been a little shaky, so that's a bad example, obviously. But the elite offensive teams, when they get out shooting the ball so well, and they can kind of match up into some capacity inside with Arizona, can they shoot the ball well enough at high volumes against the elite teams 2 or 3 games in a row to go win a national championship? That's really my only concern with Arizona. Their schedule is also part of the reason I think I haven't talked about them a lot, because they played a great start of the season. Obviously, they beat Florida, they beat UCLA, they beat Auburn, Alabama, San Diego State. But after that, and UConn, right? Yeah, and UConn. But after that, right, since the new year, they have played Utah, Kansas State, and TCU, and before that, Bethune-Cookman and South Dakota State. That's why Arizona is not being talked about right now. They haven't gotten into the thick of their Big 12 schedule yet, and they're really not going to for a while, which is a crazy thing to say. Big 12 is great this year, one of the best conferences ever it is this year. Arizona State, UCF, Cincy, West Virginia are the next 4 games. Then they get BYU on January 26th. They don't get Kansas until February 9th. They only play Texas Tech once, and it's home on February 14th. And they don't get Houston. They only get them once, right? They play Houston once on February 21st, and they only play Iowa State once, and that's at home on March 2nd. They do have to go to Houston, but they only play Iowa State, Houston, and Texas Tech once each. They get BYU twice, and they haven't played any of them, and they won't have played any of them until Monday, January 26th at BYU, which they'll likely be an undefeated number 1, easy number 1, unanimous team in the country for that. That's why we haven't talked about them a lot. I don't think that they'll drop any games in between this now and then. But that's the part of it, is that I'm very excited to see them play that piece of the schedule, because realistically, the Big 12 this year, put it this way actually, about the Big 12. The top 4 in the Big 12 are probably the best top 4 in college basketball history. I will stand on that as of right now, in this moment. And really even the top 5, like Arizona, BYU, Iowa State, Houston. Obviously the order would be Arizona, Iowa State, Houston, BYU, and Texas Tech as that floating 5th team, even if you want to consider them. That is as elite of a top 4 and top upper echelon in a conference as you are going to get in the history of the sport, right? Look at the SEC last year. Auburn, Florida, Alabama, Tennessee. I take these 4 in the Big 12 over those 4. You had 2 national title contenders of those 4 last year, Auburn and Florida as 1 seeds. Alabama and Tennessee, both 2 seeds. I understand they were both 2 seeds. They were never going to win a national championship last year, those 2 teams, Alabama and Tennessee. Going into the NCAA tournament, that was a known thing that they could not win the national championship, and they obviously didn't. Even teams like Kentucky and A&M lost early in the first weekend because, or I think Kentucky actually lost to Tennessee. I think that was actually the Sweet 16, but none of their teams were sniffing a national title. All 4 of these teams, again, Arizona, Iowa State, Houston, for sure, and BYU, I would put in there, are national title contending teams. I think those top 3 are like legit could be all 1 seeds. Like if Arizona, Iowa State, and Houston ended up all as 1 seeds, it wouldn't surprise me knowing how good they are and have been. The 3 of them together have 1 loss right now, and they are like I wouldn't surprise me if they're the 3 best teams in the country at one point is what I'm trying to get at, and it's very, very rare you see that. 2019 ACC had 3 1 seeds, and the 2009 Big East had 3 1 seeds. I think the 2019 ACC only had 2 4 seeds after that, and the Big East had 2 3 seeds after that, where, like, as of right now, if those 3 teams got a 1 seed, BYU, I think, would be a 2, maybe a 3 seed. Texas Tech is pushing into that territory of like a 3, maybe a 4. They're all comparable to each other, to one another, but I just think that you don't see 3, 4, maybe even 5 title contenders like we are seeing in the Big 12 right now. Houston is, I saw a really great quote. Let me pull it up actually from Joe Lunardi, the bracketology, father of bracketology. Joe Lunardi said, Houston is the most forgotten excellent team in a long time. Couldn't agree more. I think their analytical profile holds them back a little bit, where usually it's the opposite, where right now they're 10 on KenPom, but they're 15-1. They haven't been amazing offensively in like effective field goal percentage, and there are 4 factors, and the loss to Tennessee are dragging them down a little bit, and the top of the country have been so good. But number 10 at 29.04 on KenPom on net rating, they are a point away from being 7th, right where Illinois is. So the margins are super thin. The top 10, 11, 12 teams in the country have been so good that the back part of it kind of get clouded together a little bit. So I do agree with Joe Lunardi. Houston is being completely overlooked right now for no reason at all, other than there are other great teams in their conference and in the country. But this part, at this point of the season, the current top of the Big 12, I will go out and say that is the best conference ever, is the best top of any conference ever as of right now. Will they all get 1 seeds? Probably not. It's very unlikely because you have teams like UConn that are probably going to walk through the Big East. You have teams like Michigan and Purdue and even Gonzaga and Illinois is pushing up there, and Duke. Like, it's very unlikely, but it's obviously possible. I do want to talk about Florida, not only because it was such a massive week for them, but I was there. Or maybe I should say it the other way around. Not only because I was there, but because it was such a massive week for Florida. Beat Georgia, number 18 in the country, and you beat another top 25 team in Tennessee. Massive, massive week for Florida to kind of get things right because they have been shooting the ball at astronomically low rates. Their guards obviously haven't been good enough and haven't been converting, but they've been losing games by 1 possession. They've been offensive rebounding the shit out of the ball, shot blocking and defending well. Their front court has been keeping them in games and winning them some games. Once they figured out how to get the guards going a little bit, that was going to unleash everything. And it does 100%. And just getting these dominant wins or under your belt, right? Georgia was a relatively dominant win. They beat the absolute shit out of Tennessee, and they looked like what you want out of Florida. This week at home against Tennessee, I was in the building. I saw the whole game. I was there for practice. I was talking to Todd Golden for probably an hour or 2 across Friday and Saturday. I was with Xavier and Tommy Houck and their team. Like, this is the Florida you wanted to see back in November and early December. This is everything we expected them to be. I don't know if it was just Boogie Flan's haircut that got him going, but we'll take it. Walter Clayton got a haircut. I put a tweet out there, and people kind of resonated with it. Walter Clayton got a haircut before last season. He had really long hair at Iona, and then in his first year at Florida, cut the dreads, went to a little bit, not a full buzz cut, but a little bit of a shorter buzz. And then he was first team All-American, and he led his team to a national championship. Boogie Flan cuts his hair, and he looks like Walter Clayton. He literally does. 23 points. I think he shot 3 of 6 from 3. He looked great. I thought Xavier and Herb Klavchar shot the ball well and looked pretty comfortable and good, taking smart shots. Some of them weren't falling, but they're taking the right shots that are rimming in and out every now and then. And it opened up the game for everybody else. Ruben Chinyulu had I think it was 19 and 16 or 18 and 16 rebounds. He was great. Tommy Hawk was good, not amazing. Alex Condon was good, not amazing, because they didn't need to be, right? If you have Boogie Flan scoring 23 and Ruben Chinulu grabbing 20 and 20, like they're gonna beat everybody. They're gonna beat majority of teams in the country, and they can beat anybody if they play like they did against Tennessee. That was also not the game I expected that to happen, which is the wildest part. I was talking to Xavier on Friday, and I'm saying we're talking about how he gets his shot, like getting his shot going, getting comfortable, the mental game, the mental aspect of it, and we're going over their team scout. I'm like, it's probably not the game to anticipate that. Although he's obviously still going through everything he needs to operationally and logistically to do it every game. But like Tennessee's a team that plays a very crunch down game. They play high pressure, high ball pressure defense. They meet at half court, even beyond that at times. These are the two best offensive rebounding teams in the country going into the game. They're physical. So it was going to be a rock fight. And the fact that this was the game that Florida came out and proved themselves like, we're good. We are fucking good. Like, we're good. That says a lot to me. The Georgia game, I just wanted to see them handle business, win by double digits, because they are a much better team than Georgia. And they did. And they did everything you wanted them to do this week, Florida. And I don't know if I want to jump the gun and say they can win the national championship, but they're pushing up into the territory of being a 2 or 3 seed, right? Because they're 11-5 right now, but they're 12th in KenPom. All their losses are by 1 or 2 possessions. They played Arizona very, very tight. They lost to UConn by 4 in the Garden, Duke by 1 away also. Like, these are losses that are fine in the grand scheme of things. The TCU and the Mizzou losses are weird and they suck and they're annoying, but the Georgia-Tennessee week was massive. This week they get to play Oklahoma away and they go to Vandy. That is going to be everything for them and everything for Vandy also. I think this is realistically right now, these are the 2 best teams in the SEC for sure. Arkansas is kind of sniffing a little bit close. Alabama lost 2 games this week. So this is to be the best team in the SEC. Go and take care of business on the road to Oklahoma, and then you go to Nashville to play Vandy in what's going to be maybe the best game of the weekend. You're bigger than them. You're more physical than them. They have the advantage, especially with the size. It gives them such a good floor like it does in every game. But shout out to Florida because awesome week for them. I really enjoyed my time being down there. And super great people, great coaching staff. I think I mentioned it earlier in the intro, but love them. And I love the campus and everything they have going on down there. I'm impartial to everything, but they're people. I'm a human being. I very much enjoy them. And then one last thing I want to do before the scheduled segments, panic meter, excitement scale, schedule, and Q&A. I want to spend a minute on a mid-major. Hold up. Mid-major minute. There we go. Maybe we'll have to make this a regularly occurring segment also. The mid-major minute is going to be about the Racers of Murray State this week because I think that they are one of not only the best mid-major teams in the country, but I think that this is the type of team, this is the type of mid-major team that you need to keep your eye on for March. That could be very, very dangerous against power level teams. I think they're that good. Another great MVC team in an elite league this year that is one of the best mid-major leagues in the last few years, like true mid-major leagues. They have 4 or 5 teams that I could see getting into the NCAA tournament and being a 12 or 13 seed or maybe even 11 to make some noise. Right now, Murray State is 15-3 on an 11-game win streak, and they have an awesome head coach in Ryan Miller and a great system. Ryan Miller has been all over, mostly recently at Creighton under Greg McDermott. He is super analytical. He's got a very good modern twist to how he builds his system, his roster, and his coaching staff. They're top 20 in points per game right now. They shoot a bunch of threes at a very high make clip. They also, this is the most fascinating thing to me, they limit teams to 15.5 threes per game. That's number 1 in the country by a damn landslide. And when teams do shoot on them, they only shoot at a 32% make rate, which is insane. So look at the difference of that, right? Let me pull this up actually, because this is super interesting to me. Teams only shoot 15.5 threes per game on them at a 32% rate. So that's 15.5 times 0.32. So they're getting 4.9. That's not right. That is right. 4.96 points a game teams are getting on Murray State by shooting the 3 ball. Murray State shoots 28.2 threes a game at 37. So 28.2 threes a game times 0.37 is 10.434. So realistically, Murray State, with the way they're playing, this is why I talk about how Ryan Miller is an analytical guy. With the way that they're playing on the offensive and defensive end, the 3-point emphasis, they're getting almost a 6-point advantage from that alone from the start, which is absolutely bonkers. And then you go into all the rest of their team, right? They have legit power conference level talent, size, and athletes that a lot of them are former power guys, but put them in the NCAA tournament, they can compete with a 4 or 5 or 6 seed and even beyond that with teams that are from the power conference level because they have that quality on their team. Javon Jackson, Roman Damone from overseas have been really good. Frederick King, one of the guys that came over with Ryan Miller from Creighton, has been an absolute monster. Lane Taylor. If you don't know who Lane Taylor is from last year, he's a 5'11 little guard. He comes from Central Arkansas, where he was a freshman last year, and he was one of the most electric players and freshmen in mid-major basketball last year and in the country. I loved watching him play. He was absolutely amazing, and he's translating well to this system because he's not the main guy. So he takes a little bit of a step up in quality, obviously, in comp level, but he's been great in his role. He's playmaking a lot. He is this X-factor spark plug of a scorer when they need him and when he wants to be to kind of unleash their ceiling offensively. He's an awesome player. They have a ton of great players. I think they're top 60 in overall size, effective height in the entire country, leveling up with a ton of really good power conference teams. And I think that the way that they play is stylistically beneficial to how teams and how mid-major teams succeed in March. And they also play in the MVC, a league that is giving them great comp level, is giving them great battles to play against. It's very, very tough league to win the MVC. But the winner that comes out is literally more likely to win an NCAA tournament game than lose their first NCAA tournament game. I think it's something like 12-6, or I forget the exact record. I remember putting out, I think in the offseason or something like that, or early in the season, MVC teams win more first-round NCAA tournament games than they lose, and they're also 95+% of the time are underdogs in those games. So the MVC produces elite teams and elite mid-majors for March, and Murray State is absolutely one of them because their style is a March-friendly style, and they are absolutely frying right now. So you have to keep your eyes on the Racers. All right, let's get on with the normal, regularly scheduled segments. I got to pull up some of the team sheets here. We're going to do Panic Meter. We're going to do excitement scale. We'll do schedule and then Q&A. And then we'll be out of here. I think GM Adams is going to be back next week off the torn ACL virtually. Maybe in person. We'll see. Don't quote me on that. Or you can if you want to. I'm not really sure yet. Let's start with Panic Meter. And let's start with Michigan. They almost lost at Penn State. They won by 2 in Penn State's terrible last possession. And then they lost at home to Wisconsin. I talked about them a lot in the episode. I don't know where I'm fully at with Michigan right now. It's back to this game of what's the real Michigan we're going to get in March, and is there going to be a point where they go on these cold streaks like they did to start the year and like they did in these last 2 games? My hunch for Michigan says I'll go with like a 1.5. I'll go with the 2. I'll go with the 2 because like I said before, this isn't the first cold streak that we've gotten with Michigan. They started the year looking like this, and they just happened to not drop games, those TCU and Wake games. They go on that crazy streak of 10 games by beating everybody by 30, 40 plus. Then they have these 2 really bad games back to back. That's alarming for me in terms of volatility because of the playoff setup that is college basketball and March Madness and the Big Ten tournament. You go cold for a game or 2, you might skate by. Obviously, you're 16 seed if they're a 1 seed and 8 or 9, maybe, but it's not going to work against the good 4 or 5 seeds and then the 2 seeds and 1 and 1 in the final. Like, it's not going to work like that. So I'll go 2 for Michigan. I'm not overly worried. It's 1 loss realistically on their resume. They're still analytically number 1. They're going to drop to probably number 3 in the country in terms of AP rankings. So I'm not overly worried about them. Louisville, they lost to Stanford before this week, but they were home, yeah. They lost to Duke this week by 11 after being up in the first half by a buck ton, and then they ended up beating Boston College by 13, but they were down for a while early in that game, and Louisville has not looked great ever since beating Kentucky when we thought Kentucky was going to be the top of the world in college basketball this year. And realistically, Louisville is outside the top 15 in the country. They don't deserve to be in that top 15. They're around 20, maybe 21, 22 for me personally. My panic meter hasn't changed on them a ton because of these losses in this week. I think they haven't been healthy. I know that for damn sure. Michael Brown obviously has not been healthy at all and been in and out of playing for a while. I still like Louisville a little bit. I like their explosiveness offensively, and I like them better as a dark horse, actually. I'll go with a 6, though, because Louisville was a top 10 team in the country coming into the year. They had a great year at Pat Kelsey in year 1 last year, and they were an 8 seed and got their doors blown off by Creighton in the tournament, but they got to the tournament as a good team. They've really, really built upon that and put together a ridiculous backcourt and offensive team, and they haven't put it together like they want to, and they can't really afford to drop games to Stanford's actually not bad, but they can't really afford to drop games to look at teams like Pittsburgh, obviously. Pitt is a problem. Notre Dame, Wake. They're going to play Baylor, which is interesting. Georgia Tech, though, they can't afford to lose those games. And Miami, Clemson, Carolina, SMU, NC State's gotten a little bit better. SMU again, Duke, Virginia Tech, Virginia. A lot of games that they could lose on their table. So I'm going to go with a 6 for Louisville. Next one, we're going to go with Alabama. A very surprising 0-2 week. They lost at Vandy midweek. LeBaron Philon got hurt. He missed basically the entire second half, and the refs were interesting, to say the least, in that game. But Vandy deserved to win that game. It kind of is what it is if you lose at Vandy with the way they're playing. And like I said, foul issues with the refs and LeBaron not playing. It kind of is what it is. They fought back in that game. But they lost at home to Texas on Saturday, which is very alarming. LeBaron did play. I am going to go with a 4 on Bama because their style, the way they play, has always been volatile. It's the way they play, tons of possessions, push the pace, has always been a volatile style. I still think that they have the talent and guards and guys that they need to be as elite as they want to in March if they can put it together. They could be a team that is a first round or weekend exit in the tournament. Absolutely, they can. But they have been that for the last few years. That's the way that Alabama likes to play. I think they're going to end up being fine. I think this is a small blip on the path for them. So I don't have much panic on them. Next one I have on the panic meter. Let's go. I don't know what order to go in. Let's go Kansas. Kansas lost to UCF last week. Then they beat TCU in overtime when TCU should have won that game in Allen Fieldhouse. TCU had that game in their hands. And then they just lost on the road at West Virginia by 11, and West Virginia not manhandled them, but West Virginia really took care of business. Darren Peterson's obviously been in and out of full health. He's probably still not at full health, and he might not be all year. I'd say my panic meter for Kansas is at around a 7 because now we're getting to the point with them in Big 12 play where they're losing games to teams without playing Iowa State yet, without playing BYU yet, without playing Arizona, who they're going to play all these teams twice, without playing Houston, like Texas Tech also. Texas Tech and Kansas have kind of flip-flop spots from maybe a few weeks ago where Kansas was like top 15 to 20 in the country, and now Texas Tech is getting closer to the top 10, and Kansas is getting closer to the back end of dropping out of the top 25 realistically. So I am worried for Kansas because they don't seem like a team that can put it together for 2 or 3 games in a row against good teams in March, and that's going to be very, very alarming for them. Let's go over to the ACC to SMU, who was a team that looked great after beating North Carolina. Then they lost to Clemson and Duke this week, both on the road. I'm at about a 1.5 for SMU. This changes almost nothing for me for their outlook. Sure, you want to win one of these games because they're a good team. They're trying to solidify their tournament resume and get into the tournament. I think they're going to be fine. I think Clemson's a tournament team also, and obviously Duke's going to be, so it's really not the end of the world. I still like SMU a little bit. I like the way they play in terms of what you know about SMU and what you think about them. This week doesn't change that much for me, at least in my eyes. And then last one we'll go with, after today, I had a late ad of somebody, we will go with Iowa. 12-4 right now. They lost at Minnesota at the barn this week, and then they lost at home against Illinois on Sunday. My worries with Iowa is that they're too Bennett Sturt centric. Everyone was kind of talking about that a little bit. They haven't been willing to adapt that. I also think that Bennett Sturts was sick this week. Apparently they've been plagued by illness, and Bennett Sturts has kind of looked all over the place. But he took way too many heaves versus Illinois in that game on Sunday. Like way too many heaves. Tavion Banks was good. They need to play through other guys like that more often. They need to play and balance their offense a little bit more to be able to beat top Big Ten teams. The Minnesota game kind of was what it was. They had a lot of chances at the end. Whatever. Those things happen. The Illinois game, when they got their ass kicked against Michigan State. They actually did look good against Iowa State, but they lost all these games. They're playing Purdue next. They're playing team in Nebraska and other really good teams. They're not going to be able to beat those teams if they don't play a more offensively balanced game. So My worry for Iowa, it's a little more worry than panic. I guess panic, I'll put them at like a 3.5 because, again, this doesn't change my outlook immensely on what I think about Iowa. I don't think that they're a high upside team in March already because of their style and the lack of balance they have offensively and kind of what that means for beating top teams after the first round of the NCAA tournament. And everything is a March outlook. So I'll go low on that one for Iowa. I'm not really overly worried. Excitement scale. Let's get fun. Let's get fun this week. Let's start with Florida. The Gators. Little Gator chomp for you. Gator boys stay hot. Obviously had a rough start to the year, relatively rough. They won at number 18 Georgia and then at a top 25, they won at 18 Georgia and then they beat top 25 Tennessee at home by a buck ton. The guards look good. Boogie Flan had his best game as a Gator yet. He cut his hair. Ruben Chinyulu had 20 and 20. 10 would be that they're back to winning a national championship level, like they're that good. So I will put them, my excitement for Florida being there. I'm trying to be realistic about this. I was there this weekend for Tennessee, their best win of the year. I am going to go with a 9 on Florida. They're playing at Vandy this week. That's going to be the two best teams in the SEC, especially as of right now. They can win that game. We'll see what happens. But right now, they look like they could win the SEC, and they could be the best team in the SEC based off of this week and based off of the rest of the SEC, kind of just beating each other up. So I will give Florida a 9 because I'm not confident they can win the national championship yet, and that would be 10. Let's go to Wisconsin. They beat UCLA on Tuesday, and then they beat Michigan on the road. I will give Wisconsin a 7.5 because I'm feeling really good about them being a tournament team. Even though they have losses against Villanova, who probably will be a tournament team too, and TCU, the BYU, Nebraska, Purdue losses are what they are. Beating Michigan is obviously incredible. Having big wins like that in Big Ten play is everything they need to be in the NCAA tournament. This gives me a lot of comfort in them being in the tournament, and they shot the absolute lights out. If they shoot like that, they're obviously going to have a chance to beat majority of teams in the country. So shout out to Wisconsin on that one. Let's go to, we talked about them earlier, officially, Utah State. Now 14-1, 100% the best team in the Mountain West. They beat Air Force, and then they beat Boise State with their fans all there on the road by 25. I'm going to go 9.5 for Utah State. This is the best team in program history right as of right now. I can comfortably say that. Eye test, analytically, when you look at their roster on paper, everything. The Mountain West has also not been great, so they have a chance to run train and run the table realistically. They can run the table in the Mountain West. They're that good this year. So a lot of love for Utah State. Let's do two more real fast. Let's go to, where are they on the sheet? I'm trying to pull up the right, what's it called, sheets for them, the team sheets, so I can get the games right. West Virginia, they won at home this week versus Cincy and Kansas. They have a lot of bad losses on the year, and actually really not a lot. Ohio State in double overtime, Iowa State, Wake is not great. Xavier loss is bad, and Clemson. They just don't have a lot of good wins, West Virginia. I don't think this week immensely changes my opinion on them. I think Kansas looked worse more than West Virginia looked great, and Cincy is not a team that I think is great and going to be in the tournament either. But give West Virginia credit where it's due. I'll give a 3 for West Virginia because this puts them in the conversation at least. Beat a team like Kansas, and you take care of business against a team that's in a similar spot like Cincy in the Big 12. This puts them in position to fight for an NCAA tournament bid this year. So I'll give them a 3 at least to have some kind of excitement for them. And then last one, probably the best mid-major in the country, the best true mid-major in the country. Excuse me. The St. Louis Billikens, up to 15-1, the best team in the A-10. They are 34th in the country in KenPom. They just beat VCU on the road by 9, and they just beat LaSalle on the road. I'm at a 9.5 out of 10 for St. Louis. I've been very high on them since the beginning of the year, since now, through the entire season. They're awesome. The A-10 is very, very good. If they're going to be able to beat teams relatively handily, like VCU on the road, that's massive. VCU came back in that game, but VCU is a great team. St. Louis was handling that game. VCU fought back, but then St. Louis took care of business. Their balance offensively is amazing. Their system is great. Their analytical profiles are awesome. Love St. Louis. So that's going to wrap up our panic meter and excitement scale. Let's go schedule and then Q&A, and we're out of here. Schedule, your homework for this week. Everyone's favorite segment. Isn't that true? The main schedule, Tuesday, you got Villanova at Providence, Virginia at Louisville, Texas A&M at Tennessee, UConn at Seton Hall, Indiana, Michigan State, West Virginia at Houston, Iowa State at Kansas, that'll be a fun one, and Florida at Oklahoma. Wednesday, you have Iowa at Purdue, Auburn, Mizzou, Vandy, Texas, UNC Stanford, Virginia Tech, SMU, Nevada, Utah State is a great one in the Mountain West, ASU, Arizona, probably be an ass kicking, but I put it on here because it's the Arizona battle, the battle of the Arizona teams. Michigan, Washington, and TCU, BYU. Friday, you have Friday basketball. Hello. Creighton, Providence. Colorado State, Boise State is a very interesting one. And Baylor, Kansas on Friday night. Both teams need to win there big time. And then Saturday, obviously always a lot of games. Michigan State, Washington, Kentucky, Tennessee, Virginia, SMU, Florida, Vanderbilt's going to be probably the best game of the week. Iowa, Indiana, Utah State at GCU, Arizona, UCF, Arkansas, Georgia, Duke, Stanford, Texas A&M at University of Texas, BYU at Texas Tech, also probably one of the best games of the week, if not the best. St. John's at Nova, and Gonzaga at Seattle. Underrated WCC game. Sorry to Evan, our editor, who's going to have to put the homework video together for all those games. There's a lot of basketball to watch. I'm sorry. You're earning your keep this week, brother. Sicko schedule also. Monday. Oh, this is real sicko. Incarnate Word at SF Austin out of the Southland. That is a true sicko game. Valpo at Belmont on Tuesday. Wednesday, you got High Point at Winthrop, and then South Dakota State at North Dakota State. Love both those games. Thursday is another really good one. New Mexico State, friend of the program, at Liberty. And then Saturday, sicko schedule, Elon at Hofstra, Buffalo at Miami. We're just going to call them Miami. Apparently, if you call them Miami, Ohio, everyone gets angry. So Miami University instead of University of Miami for the Florida team. Buffalo at Miami University. Bradley at Illinois State in the MVC, Hawaii at UC Santa Barbara, and Montana State at Montana. That's your homework. That's your schedule. Remember, this class, I'm a tight professor. It's pause, but I run a tight ship as a professor in this class. Do your homework, get an A+. On to Q&A, and then we'll be out of here. 3 questions. We talked about Utah State. I mentioned this earlier. A lot of people asked this, but Ethan, I think Ficker on Instagram, I saw his question primarily, can Utah State go undefeated in Mountain West play? The answer is yes, they absolutely can. The Mountain West has been nowhere near the quality we want it to be outside of Utah State. The teams have been very hit or miss. I don't think they will. I think San Diego State, Colorado State, they kicked the shit out of, but San Diego State, Colorado State, Boise State, they also kicked the shit out of, but Nevada and New Mexico, GCU, even UNLV, like there's enough good teams that someone will probably beat them at some point, but they definitely can. Gabe Owens on Twitter says, which Saint do you want to see the least in March as an opponent? I take this question as. So I guess like he's saying which team that is a Saint team. So St. John's, St. Louis, St. Mary's are the 3 teams. Tough. Those all 3 are in a similar boat. St. Louis is 100% the answer to me. St. Mary's has always been good. They've never been a problem deep into March. In terms of early rounds, obviously would not want to play their system depending on what kind of team I am. St. John's, I'm not overly worried about. And St. Louis, dude, I'm telling you, they're going to be playing with a fire of a mid-major and a team that's overlooked and underseeded because that's what happens to every A-10 and mid-major team in the NCAA tournament. They are very, very, very good. I think St. Louis is the most dangerous Saint team out of the 3 and more in the entire country if we're talking March basketball. And then last one, Cooper C on Instagram. Who's your Super Bowl pick? NFL season. Good pick by our staff here because he gets some football in there. My Super Bowl pick, great question. Great question. I want to say the Rams. If Matt Stafford's hand is fine, it's never fine. I'll go with the Rams, although I love watching my Pookie JSN in Seattle also. And out of the AFC, I feel like the Texans are dangerous. just because their defense and the AFC is so wide open, but I'll make sure I have the bracket up. I'm going to go Rams-Bills in the Super Bowl. Rams over Bills in the Super Bowl. Book it. That's the blue-blooded Ryan Hammer pick with no research and besides fantasy football and just watching ball all season. So appreciate y'all for being here, especially at the end as always. If you haven't liked, subscribed, followed, etc. on all platforms, give a rating, please. I know YouTube viewers, I know you're out there and you aren't subscribed, so go do that if you're here now and you haven't already. Appreciate you guys, as always, for being here. I am not going to any games this week. I'm going to be home watching, so enjoy the games yourself. Stay safe, stay healthy. I appreciate y'all as always. Have a great week. Goodbye.